The rock cracked under the pressure of 3 clawed feet. Something heavy and fast was moving through the upper ridges of the Malkari Valley. Leaves trembled on the twisted trees. Dry wind carried the scent of old blood and warm dust. High above, a transport drone hummed as it veered away, its pilot issuing a panicked transmission, then silence. The predator had returned. Inside the temporary research station nestled near the valley's edge, the atmosphere was tense. Half a dozen alien students huddled behind reinforced glass, their glistening eyes locked on the motion sensors. The creature was massive on the thermal feed, pacing just beyond the tree line. "It's circling," said Yik, a tall thoraxy student with a thin neck stretched upward like a periscope. His voice cracked as he adjusted the frequency of the display. "It's bigger than last cycle, that's not possible." "It is regenerating," replied Cheel, a squat Alvani with translucent skin that pulsed with bioluminescence. "I told you, it feeds, it heals, we stay, we die." No one disagreed. The last cycle had ended with one of their team dragged screaming into the trees, never found. The predator, unofficially labeled Subject 8X, had been presumed dead after a drone strike. Evidently, it wasn't. The base doors hissed open with a hydraulic sigh, and all heads turned as a human stepped in, carrying 2 large duffel bags and a battered thermal lunchbox. "Afternoon," said the man, brushing dust from his sleeves. "Name's Damon Lark. I'm the new Earthside liaison." Cheel blinked slowly. "You are? The replacement?" "Yep," Damon replied, setting his bags down with a grunt. "Got the call 3 days ago, packed up, caught the first Terran shuttle out of Lunar Gate. Now here I am. You all look like you saw a ghost." Yik stepped forward. "There's a predator outside, Subject 8X. "You were not informed." Damon opened his lunchbox, revealing a stack of foil-wrapped items. "They mentioned something about predatory fauna of interest, didn't realize it was a full-blown security crisis. Want a granola bar?" "No," Cheel said stiffly. Damon shrugged and unwrapped one for himself. "Suit yourselves." The station lights flickered. A low growl echoed across the valley. Damon paused mid-bite, staring at the sound meters. "That it?" "Yes," Yik said. "It's hunting." "Cool," Damon muttered. "Where's the armory?" "We are scientists," Cheel snapped. "There is no armory," Damon raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me you built a research station in Predator territory with no weapons? We had drones. They are gone." Damon muttered something under his breath and reached into his duffel. "I brought some stuff from Earth, mostly for emergencies. First aid, power cells, a taser, and peanut butter crackers." The alien stared. Footsteps or something heavier thudded against the outer bulkhead. Yik backed away from the window. "It's here." Damon didn't panic. He calmly walked to the window and looked out. The creature moved like a bear-sized reptile, but with segmented limbs and eyes that glowed faintly under the moonlight. "Big guy," Damon whispered. "But he doesn't look like he's attacking, looks hungry." "It is always hungry," Cheel said. "No, I mean he's waiting." The creature paced twice, then stopped and looked directly at the window, not at the lights or the motion at Damon. "You got cameras out there?" Damon asked. "Yes, motion and thermal, pull up the last minute." Yik tapped the console, the feed played back. The creature had approached with caution, sniffing the air. It had paused twice near the vent shaft where Damon's scent now lingered. "I think it remembers me," Damon said. "What?" "I was part of the first planetary survey team 6 years ago. We ran into a juvenile of that species. I didn't know it was dangerous. It was injured, some kind of thorn lodged in its leg. I pulled it out, fed it jerky, and it wandered off. Thought that was the end of it." Cheel's eyes widened. "You fed it?" "Yeah, beef jerky, not the spicy kind." The creature roared again, but softer this time. More like a drawn-out whine, Damon zipped open his second duffel bag and pulled out a vacuum-sealed pouch of dried meat. "Let's test a theory." Yik stumbled forward. "You cannot be serious." Damon was already at the side hatch, overriding the lock. "Do not go out there," Cheel shouted. "I'm not going far," Damon said, sliding the meat pouch into his jacket pocket. "Just to the platform. If I scream, shut the door." He stepped outside. The night air was dry and cold, thick with dust. The floodlights buzzed overhead as Damon walked slowly down the ramp toward the edge of the clearing. The creature stood 20 feet away, crouched behind a cluster of rocks. It tilted its head as Damon approached. "Hey, buddy," Damon said quietly. "You remember me?" The creature didn't move. Damon crouched, pulled the pouch from his jacket and tore it open. He tossed a strip of meat onto the ground between them. The creature sniffed the air. It crept forward a few steps, then stopped. Damon took another piece and laid it closer. This time the creature moved forward and snatched it with its tongue, retreating to chew. Damon sat on the ground, cross-legged. "You like that, huh? Got more?" He laid out 3 more pieces in a line. The creature approached again, slower, less wary. Its eyes flicked between the meat and Damon. Inside the station, the aliens watched in stunned silence. "He is not being attacked," Yick said. "He is feeding it," Cheel whispered. "Like a companion animal." "No," Yick said. "Like a fool." Damon reached out slowly, hand open. The creature snorted, then lowered its head to sniff his palm. Damon didn't flinch. After a moment, the creature gently nudged his hand with its snout. "Well, I'll be damned," Damon said. He patted the creature's head. Its scales were warm and ridged like dry river stone. It didn't pull away. "You're not so bad," Damon said. "Just hungry." The creature made a low, gurgling sound, almost content. Damon stood up carefully and walked back toward the station. The creature followed him halfway, then stopped. "Stay," Damon said, holding up a hand. "I'll be back tomorrow." The creature blinked once and padded back into the shadows. Inside, no one spoke for several seconds. "Did you just tame a Class X predator?" Yick finally asked. Damon bit into another granola bar. "Not tamed, just made a friend." Cheel stared. "You must document everything." "Oh, I will," Damon said. "But tomorrow, right now, I'm starving." Yick pointed at the thermal feed. "It's still there, watching." "Good," Damon said. "I think I'll name him Rufus." "You cannot name it." "Too late," Damon said with a grin. "Rufus it is." The next morning, Cheel found Damon in the supply alcove, crouched beside a spread of improvised containers. He was measuring out dry ingredients with a plastic spoon shaped like a cartoon fish. "What is that?" Cheel asked, his eyes adjusting to the odd mixture of powders and flakes. "Electrolyte blend, homemade. Ran out of the standard packets during the flight here," Damon said, glancing up. "Dehydration's no joke in this climate. You all drinking enough water?" Cheel clicked his mouth plates in mild offense. "We process moisture through dermal membranes." "Hydration is not a concern." "Well, it is for me," Damon said, pouring water from a canister into the mix. "You've got 3% humidity out there, and I was sweating bullets after that little stroll." "No offense, but the environmental systems in this station aren't exactly OSHA compliant." "Who is OSHA?" Bureaucratic demigods from back home. They'd have a heart attack if they saw that external hatch seal. Cheel hesitated. "You intend to go out again today?" "Yeah," Damon said, standing. "I brought Rufus breakfast." "You cannot keep doing this." "Not planning to. I just want to learn what he wants. If he's still hanging around, that tells me something. Might be more than just food." Cheel folded his arms across his chest, which made his translucent skin ripple faintly. "This is not your field." "Nope. But I've got instincts, and Rufus didn't eat me yesterday, so I'm ahead." Outside, the sun was rising in slow vertical shafts over the crags. Damon zipped his jacket and walked to the airlock, carrying a sealed pouch in one hand and a folded tarp under his arm. Behind him, Cheel followed, recording data on a handheld console. Rufus waited at the edge of the clearing again, crouched low behind a mineral outcrop. He stepped forward when he saw Damon, this time not hesitating. Damon stopped halfway and unrolled the tarp, laying it flat on the ground. He placed the food on it and stepped back. "Let's see how civilized we can get," he said. Rufus sniffed the tarp, then padded forward and lowered himself to his belly, an awkward but deliberate motion, almost mimicking Damon's seated posture from the day before. Cheel's voice came through the comm bead in Damon's ear. "He's mimicking you." "Not a coincidence, huh?" No, Rufus began eating. He didn't rush. For a creature of his size, his movements were surprisingly restrained. Damon sat on the dirt, knees drawn up. You all see any others like him since I arrived? None. Weird. You'd think something this big wouldn't be a solo act. He rubbed the back of his neck. He's either an outcast or a scout. A scout for what? That's the question, isn't it? After Rufus finished the food, he didn't leave. Instead, he slumped onto his side with a heavy exhale. Cheel, can you see this? Yes. His breathing's labored. You think that's normal? No. His inhale to exhale ratio is elevated and his thoracic region is distended. Could be bloating, Damon muttered. Or internal parasites. You cannot treat him. I'm not planning a surgery, but if he's in pain, I'm not gonna ignore it. Damon stood and approached slowly. Rufus didn't react. He let Damon place a hand on his side. Abdomen's warm, too warm. That's inflammation. You cannot know that. I'm a field medic, Cheel. I've triaged worse with less. Rufus let out a low, wet rumble. I think he's constipated. Cheel was silent for a moment. That is a term I had hoped never to learn, Damon chuckled. If I'm right, he needs fiber. And hydration. You intend to feed him laxatives? Not quite, but I've got oats and dried apricots. We'll see if it helps. Later, back inside, Damon spread the supplies across the workbench. Yick hovered nearby, watching Damon slice dried fruit into strips. I read your personnel file, Yick said. Didn't know I was that interesting. You are not a xenobiologist. Or a licensed veterinarian. Correct. And yet you diagnosed a digestive problem in an undocumented predator species. Well, he's got a belly like a drum and he hasn't defecated near the perimeter. That's not a guess, that's observation. Yick tilted his head. You are inferring that based on a lack of fecal evidence. Exactly. That is revolting. Welcome to medicine. By late afternoon, Damon returned outside with the new mix, this time carrying a collapsible water dish filled from the reserve tank. Rufus limped over, slower than before. Cheel, Damon said, his gait's different. He's dragging his back leg. I see it. Could be joint inflammation or muscle fatigue. Rufus sniffed the oats, then ate them methodically. When he got to the apricots, he paused, then took the entire handful at once. Definitely likes the sweet stuff. After finishing, Rufus turned in a slow circle, then flopped down again. A few moments later, he started twitching small spasms along his spine. Uh-oh, Damon said, backing up. He's either sleeping or about to explode. Rufus let out a thunderous belch that startled several birds from the treetops. Okay, that's progress. The next morning, Yick approached Damon with a tablet. We reviewed the thermal logs. Rufus remained in the clearing all night. Did he move at all? No, but approximately 1 hour before sunrise he defecated. Damon grinned. Told you. Yick looked mildly ill. It was extensive. Fiber works wonders. Later that day, Damon found Cheel examining the nutrient recycler in the storage bay. You got a minute? Cheel didn't look up. I do not wish to see any more stool samples if that is your intent. Not this time. I want to try something different. Controlled contact. With Rufus? Yeah, he's calm, responsive. If we can teach him boundaries, maybe even commands, he might be trainable. Train him. He is not a companion pet. I'm not talking about fetch and rollover, just basic cues. If he understands us, there's a chance this species has higher cognition. Cheel set down his tool. You believe he is sentient? I think he's testing us. He could have left. He didn't. That's deliberate. That could also be explained by dependency, maybe, but I've seen dependency. This feels different. Cheel hesitated. What do you propose? Let me try a signal call, something simple, a sound he can associate with food. You will condition him. Exactly. Just like Pavlov. Who? Never mind. The following day, Damon brought a metal clicker, an old training tool from a terrestrial wildlife preserve. He clicked it once before placing food on the tarp. Rufus approached, slower today, but alert. He paused at the sound, then resumed walking. Damon waited until the creature finished eating, then clicked again. Rufus's head tilted. That's a good sign, Damon said. Over the next hour, he repeated the pattern: click, food, click. Rufus began reacting faster, even nudging Damon's hand when the sound came late. "He's making connections," Damon said into his comm. "That was not expected," Cheel replied. By evening, Damon leaned against the station wall, watching Rufus chew on a piece of rehydrated apple. "I think he's bored," he said. Boredom implies a surplus of cognitive capacity. Exactly. That night, a storm crawled over the valley. Lightning danced between the ridges. The station lights dimmed briefly as a power relay surged. Damon stood near the observation window, watching the branches thrash. In the clearing, Rufus had dug a shallow depression and curled inside it, dirt mounded over his flanks. "He made a shelter," Damon said. Cheel joined him at the window. "That is, not instinctive behavior for predators of that size. I don't think he's a lone carnivore. I think he's part of something bigger." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe Rufus isn't the anomaly, maybe he's the emissary." Cheel stared through the glass. "Then what is he waiting for?" Damon didn't answer. He just watched the storm roll in and waited. By the fourth sunrise since Damon's arrival, the atmosphere inside the research station had shifted from wary tension to something closer to baffled resignation. Damon was already outside when the rest of the team stirred. His boots left a clear trail in the fine dust between the station and the edge of the clearing, where Rufus now waited each morning with the patience of a well-fed stray. Cheel stood at the main viewport, arms folded, tapping idly on his console. Do humans regularly engage in this level of persistent contact with potential threats? He asked, not looking up. Yik was on the floor, calibrating the new environmental sensors. They once domesticated apex pack hunters by offering them bones and shelter. That species now travels with them in wheeled transports and sleeps on their furniture. Cheel blinked. "You are referring to the canids?" "Yes." Cheel exhaled slowly. "This is worse than I feared." Outside, Damon knelt in the dirt, unzipping a fresh pouch of chopped vegetables. Rufus had shown a preference for crunchy textures the day before, and Damon was experimenting. He placed 4 piles on the tarp: carrots, bell pepper, jicama, and a small cluster of steamed lentils. Rufus sniffed each in turn, favoring the peppers, and nudged the lentils aside with his snout. All right, no legumes," Damon muttered. "Message received." Rufus settled onto his forearms and exhaled deeply, sending a puff of dust into the air. His scales had dulled slightly overnight, and Damon noticed a faint flaking near the shoulder ridge. "You're shedding," he said, leaning closer. "Is that seasonal or stress-related?" Rufus made a low, breathy noise. "I know, buddy. I hate dry skin too." Back inside, Cheel watched Damon's movements through the external feed, jaw tight. "I cannot understand how this does not end in trauma." "Technically, it already did," Yik said, adjusting a display. "It just wasn't his." Cheel ignored the comment. "He is handling the creature like a domestic herbivore. He's adjusting based on observation. That's not reckless. It's adaptive. He is a glorified supply technician. He's a field medic with combat deployment." Cheel's mouth twitched. "That does not qualify him to engage in interspecies behavior modeling." Yik turned from the console. "He's not modeling, he's improvising." "That's the difference." Outside, Damon gently pressed the side of Rufus's neck with 3 fingers. The skin was warm, pliable, and throbbed slightly with a slow pulse. "Heart rate stable. You're running warm but not feverish. Still breathing heavy when you stand, though." He reached into his side pouch and pulled out a stethoscope. Rufus didn't flinch when Damon placed the disc against his chest plate, though his eyes tracked the movement. "Good boy." The heartbeat was slow but strong. Damon counted silently, lips moving. 62 beats per minute. Not bad for your size. You're built like a rhinoceros, but your circulation's closer to a camel's. Rufus shifted slightly, tail scraping against the dirt. Damon stepped back. "All right, no more poking today." He scanned the ridge line. A few carrion crows had returned, circling above. Damon narrowed his eyes. "Cheel," he called into the comm, "you still got those motion sensors set up past the outcrop?" "Yes." "Anything unusual in the last hour?" "Nothing yet." Why, just have a feeling. Is that a medical diagnosis? No, it's a habit from not wanting to get ambushed. Inside, Cheel checked the readouts. Thermal shows no large movement. Winds high, though, could be interfering. Damon rubbed the back of his wrist against his mouth. Let me know if that changes. He looked down at Rufus, who was now chewing on the tarp. Not food, Damon muttered, tugging it gently from the creature's mouth. You'll clog yourself again. Rufus released it with a wet snap and licked Damon's forearm. Damon froze. The tongue was rough like sandpaper but warm and oddly methodical, as if cataloging taste. Well, that's new. Inside, Yick's console pinged. I have a blip, he said. Northwest vector, small heat signature, fast-moving. Cheel leaned in. Drone? No, organic. Low to the ground. Outside, Damon's comm crackled. Damon, minor contact northeast, closing. Damon stood, eyes scanning the scrub. Copy that, I see nothing. Rufus's head whipped sideways, nostrils flaring. He stood abruptly, blocking Damon with his bulk. A moment later, a creature burst from the underbrush, a smaller version of Rufus, maybe half his size, leaner, with a bluish sheen to its scales. It skidded to a halt 10 meters away, teeth bared. Damon didn't move. Rufus stepped forward and issued a guttural chirp, short and sharp. The smaller creature blinked, then crouched low. Cheel, Damon said quietly, I think it's a juvenile, another of his kind. Looks that way. The young one crept closer, wary but not aggressive. Damon crouched slowly and held out his hand. You're safe. Easy now. The juvenile sniffed the tarp, then the air. Rufus remained still, watching. The smaller creature took a tentative step forward, then another. Damon didn't breathe, then contact. It nudged his hand with its snout. Damon exhaled. Good. That's good. He reached into his pouch without breaking eye contact and pulled out a single slice of bell pepper. The juvenile ate it immediately. Another friend, Damon whispered. Looks like you've got family, Rufus. Behind him, the clearing was still. No birds, no wind. Just the sound of slow, rhythmic breathing. Later that evening, the station's lab was buzzing not with panic, but with quiet, focused work. Yick had recalibrated the environmental scanners to track smaller targets. Cheel was running chemical analyses on the residual saliva Damon had collected from Rufus's nose during the tongue incident. I want to make something clear, Cheel said, not looking up. I still believe your behavior has been erratic and potentially hazardous. Noted, Damon replied, wiping dust from his boots. However, Cheel continued, your results are undeniable. Damon tilted his head. That almost sounded like approval. It was not. It was reluctant acknowledgement. I'll take it. Yick tapped at his console. Lab results are in. The sample from Rufus contains complex enzymes not previously cataloged. Some resemble microbial symbiotes. Gut flora, possibly? Anything dangerous? Not unless you plan to let him lick your open wounds, Damon shrugged. I try not to, Cheel stood. We need to submit full documentation to the Planetary Survey Board. The presence of a second specimen changes the ecological classification. This is no longer an isolated predator, it's a social species. They're not just social, Damon said. They're intelligent. Rufus wasn't guarding territory, he was waiting for his kin. Yick looked up. Then why didn't he go find them? Maybe because he didn't know where they were. Or maybe he was injured when they moved on. Either way, he stayed put, waited. That's not instinct, that's intent. Cheel was silent for a moment. Then, what now? I think they move on tomorrow. I saw the juvenile sniffing the wind. They're migrating. Should we track them? No, Damon said. We let them go. Let them find their own way. Yick tilted his head. You are just going to say goodbye. We're not the story here, Damon replied. They are. The next morning, Damon stood at the edge of the clearing with a final meal laid out on the tarp. Rufus and the juvenile approached, slow and deliberate. They ate in silence. When finished, Rufus looked up at Damon. Then he turned and began walking toward the ridge. The smaller one followed. Damon raised his hand. Rufus paused, then gave a single low chirp. Then they were gone. Back inside, Cheel watched the feed until the thermal signal vanished. It is over, he said. Not over, Damon replied, pulling off his gloves. Just finished. Cheel raised an eyebrow. That is the same thing, not quite. Yik chuckled. Humans are always redefining conclusions. Yeah, Damon said, it's how we survive.